You're right. You know you're right. You got the logic, the example, the receipts, and the more of it you lay out, the harder they dig in. Maybe it's a family group chat that turns into a wall of text nobody wins. Maybe it's a coworker who gets quieter and more certain the longer you talk. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't call them stupid. You just kept adding more reasons, and somehow every reason made them more sure of themselves, not less. Here's the trap. You treat winning like it's a volume problem. More facts, more examples, said with more conviction, until the sheer weight of being right forces them to agree. But their brain isn't weighing your evidence like a judge. The second an argument feels like a threat to who they are, it stops being processed as information and starts being defended against like an attack. Here are 5 things that actually change someone's mind mid-argument, and the myth about just stick to the facts that's quietly working against you. Technique 1. Listen like you're actually trying to understand, not reload. Before you respond, say back what they just said, in their words, until they agree you've got it right. A 2024 study by Guy Itzchakov and colleagues found that when someone feels genuinely heard, not just waited on, they reflect on their own position less defensively, and their attitude naturally moves toward the middle on its own. You don't have to argue them out of a position they no longer feel cornered into defending. Technique 2. Watch the pulse, not just the point. Psychologists John Gottman and Robert Levenson wired hundreds of couples to heart rate monitors during real arguments and found a hard line. Once a heart rate crosses about 100 beats a minute, the brain's reasoning capacity effectively goes offline, no matter how good your next point is. If either of you is flooded, the fix isn't a better argument. It's a real pause. 20 minutes, not 2, before either of you says another word. Technique 3. Affirm the person before you challenge the point. Psychologists Geoffrey Cohen, Joshua Aronson, and Claude Steele found that reminding someone of something true and positive about themselves, completely unrelated to the topic, measurably lowers how defensively they process evidence that threatens their view right afterward. I know how much you care about getting this right costs you nothing and buys their evidence a fair hearing instead of a reflex. Technique 4. Find the value underneath before you argue the surface. Legal scholar Dan Kahan's research on identity-protective cognition found that people don't reject facts because they're bad at math. They reject facts that feel like they're attacking their side. Find the value you already both hold, safety, fairness, not wasting money, and argue from inside it instead of from outside their identity. Technique 5. Ask, don't assert. Instead of stating your conclusion, ask the question that leads there. What happens if we're wrong about that? Psychologists Richard Petty and John Cacioppo's decades of research on persuasion found that conclusions people reason their way to themselves stick harder and resist counter-arguments better than conclusions they were simply handed. Let them do the arithmetic. They'll trust the answer more because it's theirs. Now, here's the myth quietly making people give up on facts altogether. That correcting someone with real information backfires and just makes them believe the wrong thing harder. Political scientists Thomas Wood and Ethan Porter tested this directly, over 10,000 people, 52 separate issues, and found almost no cases where a correction backfired. People update on facts more often than the myth gives them credit for. The facts were never the problem. It's arriving as an attack that was. So here's what actually works. Listen until they feel understood. Watch for flooding before you push further. Affirm the person before you challenge the point. Argue from the shared value underneath. And ask the question instead of handing them the answer. None of this means softening what's true. It means giving your argument a way in instead of a wall to bounce off. Which one of these are you actually going to try next time you're sure you're right? If this helped, follow Own the Room for more of this.